Chapter 18 Mokṣa Yoga, the Yoga of Supreme Perfection. Verse 1. Arjuna said, O mighty armed one, O Rishikesh, O killer of the Keshi demon, I wish to understand the true meaning of renunciation, sannyas, and detachment, tyag, as well as the difference between them. Verse 2. Bhagavan Sri Krishna replied, Those who are intelligent realize that sannyas means the renunciation of activities performed for personal benefit. Tyag refers to the renunciation of all activities. Anuvrtti. The final chapter of Bhagavad-gītā begins with an inquiry about sannyas and tyag. Sri Krishna says that sannyas means to renounce activities performed for one's own personal benefit, and tyag means the renunciation of all activities. One at the stage of sannyas is called a sannyasi. To be a sannyasi means to act for the benefit of the complete whole, the absolute good, Sri Krishna. A sannyasi performs all types of actions, but does so only in bhakti yoga, in the service of Krishna. The social structure of the bhakti yoga community is divided into 4 spiritual orders: brahmachari, grihasta, vanaprastha, and sannyas. All these are to study the Vedic literature. Additionally, their duties are as follows. The brahmacharis are the students, whose duties are service to the spiritual master and the observance of celibacy. Grihastas are the householders, whose duties are to earn an honest living, to give in charity, and to raise children. Vanaprasthas are those who have completed household affairs, and whose duties are to relinquish their wealth, visit holy places, and cultivate detachment. The sannyasis are the spiritual masters in the bhakti yoga community, and they are to give lessons to the brahmacharis, grihastas, and vanaprasthas, to be renounced from worldly pleasure, to be detached from politics, and to always be engaged in bhakti yoga with kaya, mana, vakya, jiva, by body, mind, words, and the full surrender of the self. Sannyas and tyag are further described in the coming verses. Verse 3. Some scholars claim that all actions should be rejected because they are inherently imperfect. Others maintain that actions such as sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be given up. Verse 4. O best of the Bharat dynasty, O tiger amongst men, please listen to my conclusion concerning the 3 kinds of renunciation. Verse 5. The 3 types of renunciation, sacrifice, charity, and austerity, should never be given up. Sacrifice, charity, and austerity purify even the wise. Verse 6. However, O Partha, even these activities must be performed without attachment to the results. This is my definite and supreme conclusion on this matter. Anuvrtti. There is a certain class of philosophers and spiritual seekers in India that say that the world is false, and that all activities should be given up if one wants to achieve perfection in human life. But this is not the conclusion of Sri Krishna in Bhagavad-gītā. Krishna says that one must act according to one's nature, and that beneficial works such as sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be abandoned, for they are purifying even for the wise. Verse 7. The renunciation of one's prescribed duties is improper. Giving them up out of bewilderment is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Verse 8. Those who give up prescribed duties because they are difficult, or through fear that they may be physically taxing, engage in renunciation in the mode of passion. Such persons never attain the benefits of true detachment. Verse 9. O Arjuna, when prescribed activities are performed out of duty, while abandoning attachment to the results, such renunciation is considered to be in the mode of goodness. Verse 10. The wise tyagi, who is absorbed in the mode of goodness, having destroyed all doubts, neither resents difficult duties, nor becomes attached to pleasant ones. Verse 11. It is impossible for those who have accepted a material body to totally renounce all activities. However, one who renounces the results of his actions is known as a true renunciate. Anuvrtti. If one gives up activities out of bewilderment, considering them to be troublesome, physically taxing, or gives up activities out of laziness, then such renunciation is considered false and in the modes of passion and ignorance. Those who are embodied can never give up action. In ancient times, as well as in our own, there are many examples of those who have abandoned everything, ran to the Himalayas or to the deserts to escape the world, but again returned to resume a life of sense enjoyment or to perform philanthropic activities. When one gives up attachment to the results of one's actions and acts with a detached heart, remembering always that Sri Krishna is the only enjoyer and proprietor of everything, then such a person is a true tyagi or sannyasi. Thus, the renunciation of a tyagi or a sannyasi are the same. Verse 12. Those who do not accept renunciation accept three kinds of results after death: good, bad, and mixed. But these results never come to one who is a true sannyasi. Verse 13. O mighty armed warrior, learn from me the 5 factors that accomplish all actions that are explained in the Vedanta. Verse 14. The basis, the body, the performer of activities, the false ego, the instrument, the senses, the different types of endeavors, and the Supreme Person, these are the 5 factors that accomplish all actions. Verse 15. These 5 factors are the source of all actions, both good and bad, that an embodied being experiences in this world. Verse 16. Yet the fool that believes only the self is the doer cannot understand this subject due to meager intelligence. Verse 17. Those who have no false ego and whose minds are detached, even if they kill everyone on this battlefield, they actually do not kill and are not bound by their actions. Anuvrtti. Arjuna is a Kshatriya, a warrior, and he stands with Sri Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra between 2 great armies. Seeing friends and well-wishers on both sides, Arjuna initially resolved not to fight, but to throw down his weapons and renounce his duty. Sri Krishna herein brings our attention back to the battlefield, when he says, Hatva pisa ima lokan nahanti na nibadyate. He who kills does not actually kill, and does not incur any reaction. If Arjuna abandons his duty as a warrior, then certainly he will incur a karmic reaction for avoiding his duty. However, Arjuna will not actually kill anyone in the truest sense of the word, because the living beings arrayed before him ready for battle are eternal parts and parcels of the Supreme Person, and thus eternal. The Atma can never be killed. And lastly, Arjuna will not incur any karmic reactions for doing his duty. If one avoids one's prescribed duties and renounces them out of fear, bewilderment, and so forth, then one incurs a karmic reaction and has to suffer in this life or the next. Therefore, Krishna wants Arjuna to give up his weakness of heart and perform his duty. Verse 18. Knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower are the 3 elements that stimulate action. The senses, the activity, and the performer are the 3 constituents of action. Verse 19. According to the Sankhya texts, knowledge, action, and the performer of action have been classified in 3 ways according to the modes of nature. Now hear about these. Verse 20. Knowledge in which the one undivided, imperishable element is perceived in all variegated species of life is considered to be knowledge in the mode of goodness. Verse 21. However, that knowledge by which one perceives that within different bodies there is a different kind of living being is known to be in the mode of passion. Verse 22. That knowledge by which one is attached to one kind of activity, that is without any truth and based upon trivial pursuits, is known as knowledge in the mode of ignorance. Anuvrtti. Knowledge, as previously explained, means to understand the difference between matter and consciousness. Those whose knowledge is pure and uncontaminated see individual consciousness as parts and parcels of the undivided superconsciousness, as present in all species, and as transmigrating from one body to the next, life after life. In other words, the same Atma may be present in one life in the body of an elephant or a tiger, and in the next life in the body of a human being. There are no elephant, tiger, or animal Atmas as distinguished from human Atmas. One who says that the Atma of an animal and that of a human or a demigod are different Atmas has knowledge influenced by the mode of passion. One who has no proper understanding of the Atma, who is attached to the body, the actions of the body, who is absorbed in the trivial pursuits of economic development and sense enjoyment, is said to have knowledge in the mode of ignorance. Verse 23. Regulated actions performed without attachment or aversion, and with no desire for results, are said to be in the mode of goodness. Verse 24. Actions undertaken out of pride, to reap some benefit, and with great endeavor, are said to be in the mode of passion. Verse 25. Actions performed out of bewilderment, without consideration of consequences, loss, injury, and one's personal capacity, are said to be in the mode of ignorance. Verse 26. Those who perform activities without attachment, devoid of egotism, who are tolerant, enthusiastic, and unaffected by loss or gain, are said to be in the mode of goodness. Verse 27. Those who perform work desiring to enjoy the results of their actions, who are greedy, violent by nature, impure and affected by happiness and distress, are said to be in the mode of passion. Verse 28. Those who perform work in an undisciplined manner, who are coarse, stubborn, unscrupulous, offensive, lazy, bad-tempered, and procrastinate, are said to be in the mode of ignorance. Anuvrtti. Herein, actions in goodness, passion, and ignorance are described. When one looks at the world today, bearing in mind the different modes of action and their characteristics, then it is no wonder that the planet is in such a state of conflict, inflation, depression, economic despair, confusion, and denial. When people are busy exercising their overinflated egos, acting unscrupulously and violently towards their fellow human beings and animals, how are we to expect any improvement in the world? How can there be peace? Therefore, it is the duty of every sane human being to cultivate knowledge and actions in the mode of goodness that are without attachment or aversion and are free from desire and egotism. Life is a science, and Sri Krishna says that through our actions we reap the harvest of our good and bad karma. Verse 29. O Dhananjaya, please hear as I now describe to you in detail the various mentalities and determination according to the three modes of nature. Verse 30. O Partha, the mentality in the mode of goodness is that which can distinguish what should be done and what should not be done, duty and non-duty, what is to be feared and what is not to be feared, and the nature of material bondage and liberation. Verse 31. O Partha, the mentality in the mode of passion cannot distinguish between dharma and adharma, cannot discern what is right and what is wrong, and cannot decide what is duty and what is not duty. Verse 32. O Partha, the mentality in the mode of ignorance regards that which is adharma to be dharma, and that which is dharma to be adharma. It regards everything to be the opposite of reality. Verse 33. O Partha, that determination by which one strictly controls the mind, life airs, and the senses through the process of yoga is in the mode of goodness. Verse 34. O Partha, that determination by which one maintains a sense of dharma in order to accrue wealth and fulfill material desires is in the mode of passion. Verse 35. O Partha, the determination of those who cannot conquer sleep, fear, lamentation, misery, and pride is in the mode of ignorance. Anuvrtti. Throughout the Bhagavad-gītā, Sri Krishna addresses Arjuna as Partha, the son of Kunti. Krishna also addresses him as Bharata, best of the Bharat dynasty, Pandava, son of Pandu, Kurunandana, descendant of the Kurus, Parantapa, conqueror of the enemy, Gudakesh, conqueror of sleep, and Dhananjaya, winner of wealth. Krishna addresses Arjuna thusly to remind him of his position as a great warrior in a dynasty of warriors, and to encourage him to stand and fight. Sometimes fighting is necessary if it is for the right cause, but the problem lies herein. Who is to say which cause is just, who is right and who is wrong, what should be done and what should not be done? In the above verses, Krishna gives some indication as to who is of the right mentality and right determination. Clearly, those in the modes of passion and ignorance are always mistaken, not being able to distinguish right from wrong, what is to be done from what is not to be done, or proper duty from dereliction of duty. Verses 36 and 37. O best of the Bharat dynasty, now hear from me about the three types of happiness. Happiness that leads to the end of all suffering is in the mode of goodness. Such happiness tastes bitter in the beginning, but is nectar at the end, because it awakens one to self-realization. Verse 38. Happiness that is born from contact between the senses and sense objects, and is like nectar in the beginning but bitter in the end, is known to be in the mode of passion. Verse 39. Happiness that arises from sleep, laziness, and delusion, and is self-deceptive in both the beginning and the end, is considered to be happiness in the mode of ignorance. Verse 40. There is no living being, neither on earth, nor amongst the celestial beings, that is free from these three modes of material nature. Anuvrtti. Everyone and everything in the material world is governed by the three modes of material nature. In the truest sense of the word, there is no meaning of freedom or independence, unless one is free from the modes of nature. All such celebrations in the name of political emancipation are merely another form of self-deception. Where is the question of freedom when our every action is controlled by nature, and we are being pushed down the highway of life to face ultimate death? Independence from the three modes of material nature is only afforded to those who have taken shelter of a bona fide guru, who have understood the knowledge of Bhagavad-gītā, and have applied themselves to bhakti yoga. Only the bhakti yogi can truly celebrate freedom. Sri Krishna says that happiness in the mode of goodness is bitter in the beginning, but nectar in the end. This means that to control the senses and perform austerities, tapasya, in the beginning may be distasteful for the novice, but in the end, such austerities lead to the nectar of self-realization. Happiness derived from enjoying one's senses in the mode of passion may be like nectar in the beginning, but it is bitter in the end because sense gratification ultimately ends in frustration, hatred, and anger. Happiness that arises from sleep, laziness, and delusion, and is self-deceptive, is in the mode of ignorance, because it is miserable in the beginning and miserable in the end. Real happiness only comes when one awakens to the eternal self and lives a life with one's body, mind, and senses absorbed in a higher conscious plane. Verse 41. O conqueror of the enemy, O Arjuna, know that Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are classified according to the quality of their work in the three modes of material nature. Verse 42. Calmness, self-control, austerity, cleanliness, clemency, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and faith in the Supreme. These are the natural activities of a Brahmana. Verse 43. Heroism, power, steadfastness, dexterity, never fleeing from battle, generosity, and social administration. These are the natural activities of a Kshatriya. Verse 44. Farming, cow protection, and business are the natural activities of a Vaishya. For the Shudra, there is service to others. Anuvrtti. Herein, the status of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are described according to the qualities of their work. These are the 4 social orders of life, and they are present in all civilized cultures in the world. Everywhere we find those that resemble the Brahmanas, the intellectual class. Everywhere there are those that resemble Kshatriyas, administrators and warriors, and everywhere we find the mercantile and labor class, the Vaishyas and Shudras. These are the natural divisions in society, and they are determined by the quality of their work. Unfortunately, in modern India, this social system described by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad-gītā has become corrupted and is now known as the caste system, which determines one's social status by birth. The caste system is not actually the social system described in Bhagavad-gītā, known as varṇashram dharma. The caste system in India is certainly deplorable, hardly better than that of slavery, because it limits a person's potential according to one's birth. Krishna clearly states that a person is to be known by his actions and not his pedigree. Although social systems having intellectuals, administrators, mercantile, and labor classes are found around the world, they are also not the same as the varnashram system mentioned in Bhagavad-gītā. In addition to being an intellectual, a brahmana must know what is Brahman. A Kshatriya must do more than just administrate and fight battles. He must be above corruption, give protection to the people, and protect the principles of Dharma found in Bhagavad-gītā. And above all, a Kshatriya is never to be an aggressor. He is never to invade a sovereign country. The duty of a Vaishya, in addition to business, is farming and cow protection. Naturally, the purpose of business is to earn a living, but nowadays this has gone far beyond actual necessity, as per the advice of Bhagavad-gītā. Simple business has turned into massive industry, the establishing of mega multinational corporations, money hoarding, and fractional banking. These in turn have led to the corruption of government officials around the world, and ultimately to the destruction of the environment, increased poverty, and war. Cow protection, Krishi Gorakshya, is especially mentioned in verse 44. Because of all animals, it is the cow that is most necessary for the survival of the human being. Human bodies thrive on animal fat, and the cow is the animal that provides human beings with the most milk, yogurt, butter, cheese, etc. Milk and milk products, when taken in appropriate quantities, provide the human being all the necessary fat required for healthy living, thus enabling the suspension of animal slaughter. In other words, killing animals and eating meat is not necessary to obtain fat. When cows are protected, then there will be plenty of whole milk available for everyone to maintain a healthy diet. The value of the cow for human society is indisputable, and therefore in Vedic culture, the cow is considered one of the 7 natural mothers. These 7 mothers are as follows. Atma Mata Guru Patni, Brahmani Rajapatnika, Dhenurdatri Tatha Prithvi, Saptaita Matara Smritaha. Translation: one's own mother, the wife of the guru, the wife of a brahmana, the king's wife, the cow, the nurse, and the earth. These should be considered as our 7 mothers. From the Chanakya Niti Shastra. Unfortunately, the business community has turned to corporate farming and mass slaughter of cows and other animals in the name of delivering health and prosperity to the people. In actuality, the people have lost their lands, and the family farm that was once the backbone of societies everywhere has ceased to exist. Industrial farming has replaced organic fertilizers with chemical fertilizers that render the soil lifeless and produce food that is low in nutrition and high in toxic content. The meat from the slaughterhouse is also toxic and far less healthy than a vegetarian diet. Society cries for the return of the Vaishya worldwide. But governments turn a deaf ear and a blind eye, and it is the Shudra, the laborer class at the tail end of the food chain, who suffers the most. But change is in the air as people worldwide wake up from the nightmare that has become their reality and seek genuine answers to their problems. For such sincere persons, Bhagavad-gītā will provide much insight and guidance. Verse 45. Now please hear from me how those who perform their prescribed duties attain all perfection. Verse 46. Human beings achieve perfection through prescribed duties by worshipping the Supreme Person, from whom all things originate, and who is omnipresent. Verse 47. It is better to perform one's own duty, or dharma, imperfectly, than to perform another's duty perfectly. One is never subject to bad karma by performing one's prescribed duties according to one's nature. Verse 48. O son of Kunti, one's prescribed duties must never be abandoned. All activities are covered with some fault, just as smoke covers fire. Verse 49. The stage of perfect renunciation is attained by becoming unattached to material objects, disregarding material enjoyment by doing one's duty, and being unattached to the results. Anuvrtti. In the above verses, Sri Krishna stresses to Arjuna that one's duty or prescribed dharma according to the varnashram system should never be abandoned. One may think that they are not performing their duty perfectly, but Krishna says that one should remain steadfast and not yield to abandonment. At the beginning of Bhagavad-gītā, Arjuna showed an inclination to abandon his duty as a Kshatriya. At the beginning of Bhagavad-gītā, Arjuna showed an inclination to abandon his duty as a Kshatriya. Arjuna was disinclined to fight and was thinking that it might be better to take up the plow or the staff of renunciation, but Krishna did not agree. Now the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna is drawing to a close, and we will soon see that Krishna has revived Arjuna, and with a regained heart he will resume his duty with full enthusiasm. Verse 50. O son of Kunti, now learn from me how one can attain perfection by acting in the way that I shall now briefly describe to you. Verses 51 through 53. With pure intelligence, controlling the mind with determination, abandoning attachment to sense objects, being devoid of both attachment and hatred, residing in a secluded place, eating little, controlling speech, body, and mind, being constantly engaged in meditating on the Supreme Person, being renounced, free from egotism, the misuse of power, conceit, lust, anger, covetousness, and being unselfish and peaceful. Such a person is qualified for realization of the absolute truth. Verse 54. When such a self-satisfied person realizes the absolute truth, he neither rejoices nor laments. Seeing all beings equally, he attains transcendental devotion unto me. Verse 55. Through such devotion that person knows me in truth. Thus knowing me in truth, he enters my realm. Verse 56. Although one may constantly engage in various activities, by my mercy, those who take shelter of me reach my eternal abode. Verse 57. Consciously renouncing all activities unto me, considering me to be the supreme goal, and taking shelter of the process of devotion, always think of me. Verse 58. By my mercy, all your troubles will be overcome if you think of me. However, if out of false ego you ignore me, you will perish. Verse 59. If due to false ego you think, I will not fight, your decision will be useless, because your very nature will urge you to do so. Verse 60. Being bound by your intrinsic nature, the very activity that you now refuse to perform due to bewilderment will inevitably be carried out by you, O son of Kunti. Verse 61. O Arjuna, the Supreme Controller resides in the hearts of all living beings. By his illusory energy, he directs all their activities, as if they were mounted on a machine. Verse 62. O Bharat, take shelter in him with all your heart, and by his mercy you will achieve everlasting peace and the supreme abode. Anuvrtti. Sri Krishna now gives Arjuna an infusion of encouragement by stating that by following his instructions, Arjuna will realize the absolute truth and will enter his supreme abode. By consciously offering the results of all his actions unto Krishna, by devoting himself to Krishna, and always thinking about Krishna, Arjuna will achieve all perfection. The alternative, Krishna says, is that by neglecting his instructions, Arjuna will surely perish. This is the open secret of Bhagavad-gītā. One who adheres to its message, that is free from all material defects, and is delivered by the Supreme Person, Sri Krishna, becomes perfect in knowledge and self-realization. Neglecting Krishna's instructions is, however, tantamount to spiritual suicide, and Krishna warns Arjuna that if he takes that path, he will surely perish into the world of bewilderment, illusion, and death. Verse 63. I have thus disclosed to you that knowledge which is most confidential. Deliberate upon it, and do as you wish. Verse 64. Listen once again to the most confidential secret of all, my supreme instruction. Because you are very dear to me, I am telling you this for your ultimate benefit. Verse 65. Fix your mind upon me, devote yourself to me, worship me, and offer your respects unto me. By doing so, you will certainly come to me. I promise you this, because you are very dear to me. Verse 66. Abandon all types of dharma, come and surrender unto me alone. Do not fear, for I will surely deliver you from all reactions. Anuvrtti. In verse 63, Sri Krishna says that he has disclosed to Arjuna the most confidential knowledge, and tells Arjuna to deliberate upon it, and then do as he wishes. But because Arjuna is very dear to Krishna, and because Krishna is Arjuna's guru and well-wisher, Krishna again gives him one last instruction and assurance. Krishna's final instruction is that Arjuna should always fix his mind upon him, he should devote himself fully to him, worship him, and offer his respects unto him. This is the essence of Krishna consciousness. Krishna says that by doing this, Arjuna will surely come to him. The ultimate instruction to always remember Krishna is also stated in Padma Purana as follows. Smartavya satatam Vishnur, Vishmartavyo najatuchit, sarve vidi nishedhasyur, etayor eva kinkaraha. Translation. Sri Krishna, Vishnu, should always be remembered and never be forgotten at any time. All rules and regulations mentioned in the Shastra should be subservient to these two principles. From the Padma Purana. In verse 66, we find the climax of Bhagavad-gītā, wherein the ultimate dharma of surrendering oneself fully to Krishna is stated. Sri Krishna tells Arjuna that giving up everything to follow his instructions need not be a cause of fear, because Krishna will protect him. By such self-surrender, Arjuna will come to Krishna in his supreme abode. The supreme abode lies beyond the material universe, and is known by those who are learned as Vaikuntha. Those who worship the Vishnu avatars, or form of Narayan, will attain to the Vaikuntha realm. But superior to Vaikuntha are the realms of Krishna's avatars, such as Sri Ramachandra in Ayodhya and Vasudev Krishna in Dwarka. Those who worship Sri Ramachandra and Krishna's expansion as Vasudev will attain to Ayodhya, Dwarka, and Mathura respectively. Superior to Dwarka is Mathura, superior to Mathura is Vrindavan. Govardhan is superior to Vrindavan, and Radhakund is superior to Govardhan. Only those who worship Krishna's human-like form, known as Shyamasundar, Govinda, will attain to the topmost realm. Vaikuntha janito vara madhupuri tatrapi ratsosavad, vrindaranya mudhara pani ramanat, tatrapi govardhana, radha kunda mihapi gokulapate, premamrita plavanat, kuryad asya virajato giritate sevam viveki naka. Translation. Because Sri Krishna appeared there, Mathura is considered to be spiritually superior to Vaikuntha. Greater than Mathura is the forest of Vrindavan, because this was where the Rasalila pastimes of Krishna took place. Govardhan Hill is considered to be superior to Vrindavan, because Krishna performed wonderful pastimes there and raised it with his left hand. However, Radhakund is superior to Govardhan, because it is brimming with the nectar of divine love for the master of Gokula. Which intelligent person will not render service to this place that is situated at the feet of Govardhan? From Upadeshamrita. The supreme abode of Krishna is the land of Vraja, which includes Vrindavan, Govardhan, and Radhakund. In verse 66, Sri Krishna indicates to Arjuna, by the use of the verb vraja, meaning to go, that Arjuna will come to Krishna in the topmost realm of the spiritual world. This superior realm is also known as Goloka Vrindavan, and is described in Brahma Samhita as follows. Chintamani prakarasad masukalpa vriksha lakshavrateshu surabhir abhipalayantam lakshmi sahasrashata sambrama sevyamanam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Translation: I worship Govinda, the original person, who is tending the cows in that divine realm where the abodes are built with touchstone. He is surrounded by millions of desire trees and is constantly served with great care and attention by hundreds of thousands of goddesses of fortune. Venum kvanvantam aravindalaya taksham barahavatam samasitam buddhasundarangam kandarpakoti kamaniya vishesha shobham govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Translation: I worship Govinda, the original person, who is playing his flute and has beautiful eyes like blooming lotus petals. His head is decorated with peacock feathers, and his charming form, tinged with the hue of rain clouds, is so alluring that it enchants millions of cupids. Alola chandra kalasad vanamalya vamshi ratnan gadam pranayakeli kalavilasam shamam tribhanga lalitam niyata prakasham govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Translation: I worship Govinda, the original person, whose neck is decorated with a garland of forest flowers that swings to and fro. His hands that hold his flute are adorned with jeweled bracelets. His threefold bending form as Shama Sundar is eternally manifest as he enjoys his various pastimes of divine love. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santa sadhaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam Shama sundaramachintya gunaswarupam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Translation: I worship the original person, Govinda, who is always meditated upon by those whose eyes are anointed with the salve of divine love. His eternal form as Shama Sundar is eternally endowed with inconceivable qualities, and he is always situated within the hearts of his beloved devotees. Shriya kanta kanta paramapurusha kalpataravo druma bhumischintamani ganamayi toyam amritam kataganam natyam gamanamapi vamshi priyasaki chidanandam jyoti paramapitad ashvadyamapicha sayatra kshirabdi shravati surabibhyash chasu mahan nime shardakyo vavrajati nahi yatrapi samaya bhaje svetadvipam tamahamiha golokamitiyam vidantaste santa kshiti virala chara katipaye. Translation: I worship the divine abode of Shvetadvip, where the goddesses of fortune are the loving consorts to the Supreme Person Sri Krishna. In that place, every tree is a desire tree, the land is made of touchstone, all water is nectar, every word is a song, every step is a dance, the flute is the dearest friend, the light is full of spiritual bliss, and all things there are most relishable. Where vast oceans of milk continuously flow from millions of cows, where time does not pass away even for half a moment, that realm, Goloka Vrindavan, is only known to a very few self-realized yogis in this world. Verse 67. This knowledge should never be disclosed to those who are not self-controlled, who do not perform bhakti yoga, or who are envious of me. Verse 68. One who teaches this supreme secret of bhakti yoga to others advances to the highest platform of devotion and attains full consciousness of me. Of this, there is no doubt. Verse 69. There is no one dearer to me in this world than such a devotee, nor will there ever be anyone dearer to me than one who teaches this supreme secret. Verse 70. Those that study this sacred conversation of ours worship me through the sacrifice of knowledge. This is my conclusion. Verse 71. Those who hear this sacred conversation with transcendental faith and without envy will achieve perfection and reach my auspicious abode. Anuvrtti. Herein, Sri Krishna says that those who are envious cannot be taught the science of the absolute truth. However, those with the fortitude of Krishna consciousness, who study this sacred conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, and who teach this knowledge to the non-envious, are dear to Krishna, and will achieve perfection and attain Krishna's abode. This is confirmed in the following verses of the Gita Mahatmya and the Vaishnaviya Tantrasar. Gita Shastram idam punyam, yaf patet prayata puman, Vishno padam avapnoti, bayashokadi varjitaha. Translation. One who recites the Bhagavad-gītā, which bestows all virtue, with resolute devotion, will attain to the supreme abode of Vishnu, or Krishna, which is always free from the mundane qualities based on fear and lamentation. Samsara sagaram gauram, tartumichati yo nara, gitanavam samasadya, paramyati sukhena saha. Translation. A person who desires to cross over the terrible ocean of material suffering can do so very easily by taking shelter of the boat of the Bhagavad-gītā. Shaligrama shilayam va, deva ghare shivalaye, tirte nadyam patet gitam, sobhagyam labate dhruvam. Translation. One who recites the Bhagavad-gītā in the presence of the deity, Shaligram Shila, or in a temple of the Supreme Person, or in a temple of Shiva, at a place of pilgrimage, or on a bank of a sacred river, such a person becomes qualified to receive all good fortune. Etan mahatmya samyuktam gītapatam karoti ya, shraddhaya ya shrunotyeva, paraman gatimapnuyat. Translation. One endowed with faith, who studies and glorifies the Gita, certainly reaches the supreme abode. Verse 72. O Partha, O Dhananjaya, have you heard this carefully with undivided attention? Has your ignorance and bewilderment been destroyed? Verse 73. Arjuna replied, O infallible one, O Krishna, by your mercy my delusion has been dispelled, and my mental equilibrium has been restored. Now that my doubts have been removed, I am steady once more, and will follow your advice. Verse 74. Sanjaya said, Thus I heard this conversation between Vasudeva and the great Arjuna, that is so glorious that my hairs stand on end. Verse 75. By the grace of Vyas, I have heard this most confidential secret concerning the topmost system of yoga, spoken by Sri Krishna, the master of all yoga. Verses 76 and 77. O Emperor, continuously remembering this most profound conversation between Sri Krishna, the killer of the Keshi demon, and Arjuna, I rejoice again and again. When I remember the beautiful form of the Supreme Person Sri Krishna, I am struck with wonder. Verse 78. Where there is Sri Krishna, the master of yoga, and where there is Arjuna, the mighty archer, there will always be prosperity, victory, opulence, and righteousness. This is my firm conviction. Anuvrtti. The sacred conversation between Sri Krishna and Arjuna ends with verse 73, wherein Arjuna says that his delusion and doubts have all been dispelled. Thus, Arjuna agrees to follow Krishna's instructions. This is the ideal relationship between guru and disciple. The guru must dispel the delusion and doubts of a disciple by delivering the message of Sri Krishna found in Bhagavad-gītā, without change or adulteration, and the disciple must be willing to follow such instructions. The potency of hearing Krishna's message is also confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam as follows. Shrinvatam svakata Kṛṣṇa, punya shravana kirtana, hridyantasto hyabhadrani, vidunoti suritsatam. Translation. Sri Krishna is the friend of the pious. He removes all inauspiciousness from the heart of those who have developed the desire to hear his message, which is virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Sanjaya has been narrating the conversation between Sri Krishna and Arjuna to Emperor Dhritarashtra, and now he expresses his own satisfaction and ecstasy. He says that by remembering the words of Sri Krishna and by seeing his beautiful form, he feels great ecstasy Hrishya, and great wonder, Vismaya. Sanjaya then concludes with the benediction that wherever there is Sri Krishna, the master of yoga, and wherever there is Arjuna, the sincere disciple, there will always be prosperity, victory, opulence, and righteousness. Thus ends the Anuvrtti of Srimad Bhagavad-gītā. Om Tat Sat. Thus ends chapter 18, entitled Mokṣa Yoga, from the conversation between Sri Krishna and Arjuna, in the Upanishad known as Srimad Bhagavad-gītā, the Yoga Shastra of divine knowledge, from the Bhishma Parva of Mahabharata, the literature revealed by Vyas, in 100,000 verses. Thus ends the Srimad Bhagavad-gītā.